Good morning, I'm Rowena Crosby.
And I'm Deborah Renner, and we are your co-hosts for this show. Thank you for joining us for the next 17 minutes for your Invisible Toolbox, the show that's based on the book that Ro and I co-authored, and each week we look at a tool for working more effectively with others, and the show is sponsored by Tero International.
We got our hands on an interesting survey. It's a 2013 survey of 1,200 people. 83% of them, this is a large number, 83% of them had this to say. They felt that recognition and validation in the workplace was more important than financial payoffs.
That's
wow.
Pretty impressive,
yes.
Isn't it? And there's other research conducted by psychologist Leon Seltzer, and he suggests from his research that the feeling of being understood, people are looking for more than the feeling of being loved.
That's dramatic.
Yeah.
These are incredibly dramatic numbers. So on our show today, we're going to explore some techniques that will allow you to interact with people in a way that makes them feel more understood.
We're going to take a look at the techniques of paraphrasing and checking in, and these techniques really help people feel emotionally connected to you, and that makes for effective communication.
And as we do in all our shows, we're going to bring to you a bunch of resources and links that will help you to build your own skills.
And we are so excited for our Ask the Expert segment because we have with us today in the studio Kathy Obradovich, and she's the Des Moines Register political columnist and also opinion editor. She's had such an extensive experience interviewing guests, and we're going to take a look at how she connects with all those different interview guests.
And the interviewer gets to be interviewed today.
I know.
It's going to be cool. In our Invisible Tool of the Week, we're going to provide you with ideas on how you can use two tools, paraphrasing and checking in, to improve your communications with others. And this isn't easy. So in our development challenge, we're going to challenge you to try it out this week.
And so if you're following along, we're in chapter 11. It's titled Say It Again, Sam, in your Invisible Toolbox. And if you don't have a copy of the book yet, scroll down, click the link below, get yours today. Let's get started.
So in today's business world, we all know that emailing and texting have really kind of supplanted our face-to-face communications and often our phone calls. And we have this impression or this illusion that we're actually being more efficient when in fact we may be damaging some of our relationships and our ability to interact by using those technologies.
We can be. In fact, it's been proven. Kirk Erickson of the Brain, Aging, and Cognitive Health Lab at the University of Pittsburgh says that the use of technology can actually atrophy the frontal lobe of our brain, and the shrinking of this part of our brain makes it more difficult for us to process information and to interact with other people.
Okay, we're talking about our brain shrinking, so that's got to be a bad thing. And it actually is bad because that's the part of the brain that's responsible for emotions, for memory, and for paying attention. And those are all things we need when we're communicating with others.
We definitely do. It's not uncommon for people to feel that just if they're hearing something, they're actually communicating. But true communication relies on an ability to communicate in a way that actually creates a synergy between both people.
And we use that term synergy in business a lot. What exactly does that mean? Well, it's really being in sync with someone. It's when we feel validated in the presence of someone, and we're going to look at the tools of paraphrasing and checking in and how those play into it.
So paraphrasing is nothing more than saying what you heard, and if you can say it back in the way the person said it, keep it as close to the message as possible, that's most effective.
And this isn't just our opinion. Actually, professional counselors and therapists use this technique a lot. They often call it reflecting, and it's really a way to make the other person feel heard as well as validating their emotions.
And checking in is also an important technique, and we do that after we have paraphrased. We say something like, "Did I get that right?" or "Is that what you meant?" This makes the other person really feel as if it's important to you to get the message the way they wanted it to be sent, that you understand it and you truly listen to it.
And it's important in all communications, but particularly in communications where there is the presence of a little bit of conflict. Instead of responding, if we can actually repeat back what someone said and do it in a neutral tone of voice, it allows the other person to hear what they've just said, and they may have a different perspective.
They might as well, and it also communicates something to the other person. Professional journalists use this well when they interview people. One example, Oprah Winfrey. You can listen to her interviewing people, and she'll ask something that might be very sensitive for them to respond to. She pauses, and then she will just say back what they said. And you can imagine how you'd feel if you had said something on a public stage and then they just was said it again, and it validates and actually affirms the person. It dignifies what they said. That is a great consequence of being able to use these techniques.
Well, and she's the master at getting people to disclose, and that's one of the techniques that allows that. Well, it's time to take a look at our invisible tool of the week. Those of you following along in the book will find us in chapter 11. It's called Say It Again, Sam. The tool itself is to paraphrase and check in. And if you are in the book, turn to page 29. That's where you'll find us.
And it's interesting that we can use paraphrasing every time we are listening, but actually most of the time we're not actually listening. We're thinking about what we're going to say next when we're receiving someone's message. Paraphrasing requires us to just stay with that person's message.
And actually listen to
Yes.
it. And to repeat it back, as well as try to capture the emotion. So it's a pretty complicated thing. And above all, avoid any judgment or rushing to problem solving, which we have a tendency to do that. So you can begin a paraphrase with a phrase such as, "What I think I hear you saying is," and then fill in the blank. Or, "As I understand it, you're saying," and then complete the sentence.
And then you can follow with a question like, did I get that right? And that is actually your check-in. And if the person says no, great time to go back, clarify, ask them to repeat, because they're going to be more willing to actually share more information if they truly feel as if you're trying to get the message they're trying to get across.
And graduates of Tero workshops are going to know this as listening to understand versus listening to respond. And our tendency is to listen to respond. So this is not easy, and that's the focus of our development challenge.
It is. This week for the development challenge, we're going to ask you to become conscious in your conversations.
So pick a conversation that you're in the middle of. Maybe not pick a real difficult one to practice this out, because it's a little bit clunky when we first try it. But listen to what the person says and then repeat back, paraphrase back what you heard, and try to also capture the emotional state or the feelings with it.
Yeah, that's really important, because the emotions, when we try to understand the feelings that are being expressed, we can then come back with something like, you know what, I sense there's some frustration around that. Could you tell me more about it? Or, it's important to really talk through this. I can see this is important to you. Those emotions are part of the message.
They are, and how can you possibly know what the emotions are? Well, we all know communication is not just the words, it's not just the verbal. So watching for those nonverbals, watch for some inconsistencies, calling them out if there's a different message being communicated verbally versus nonverbally.
So that's the task for this week. Be conscious in those conversations.
And maybe start it at home with people who you love, and then you can try bringing it to work into customer relationships. Well, now it's time to take a look at our top social media posts of the week.
And those of you who follow Tero on social media know that we post several links every day, actually, to useful, relevant content around interpersonal skills. We're going to feature 2 of this week's posts right now.
And our first featured post is to a wonderful TED Talk. It's a very popular one, 11 million views. It's titled 10 Ways to Have a Better Conversation, and in this TED Talk, Celeste Headley explains how she learned to talk and listen to people more effectively. You'll find a link to that on all Tero social media platforms today.
And our second piece is an article from the Harvard Business Review, and it's titled 3 Ways Leaders Can Listen with More Empathy, and it's by Christine Riordan. And she talks about the importance of effective listening in the workplace, colleague to colleague, leader to colleague, and how to show a greater understanding of people and their points of view just by becoming a better listener. This is going to be on all Tero social media platforms on Wednesday.
And now we're to the portion of the program we love this. It's the Ask the Expert segment, and we are delighted to welcome to our table Kathy Obradovich. Kathy's a longtime political reporter. Most recently, she's been named editor of the opinion section of the Des Moines Register. We feel so fortunate to have you with us. Thank you, Kathy, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Kathy, before we get started on the questions, can you tell our viewers a little bit about your professional and personal background and maybe how you use the techniques of paraphrasing and checking in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a journalist for over 30 years. I've been a reporter, I've been an editor, now I'm writing opinion and editing opinion at the Des Moines Register. And throughout my entire career, interviewing people, getting information from people who are giving it to me verbally is a core of what I do. Mm-hmm. And so really, I have spent 30 years trying to develop the skill of effective face-to-face communication and understanding what people are telling me. And you know what? sometimes it's hard to follow what people are telling you, even if you're listening carefully. And so that technique of checking back, am I understanding you correctly? What I'm hearing you say is, those types of techniques are really vital for just making sure that the information that you're getting is accurate and that you're getting the nuance. Sometimes when you're interviewing somebody about something that might be a little bit abstract, or it might involve emotional content, it's easy to misunderstand people or not understand exactly where they're coming from, or they may not be expressing it very well because they're emotional. And so you want to slow it down, say, all right, this is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how media savvy or how experienced your subject is, they might feel comfortable correcting you if you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But that check-in to invite them to correct you if you're wrong, do I have that right? That makes people feel a lot better. It makes them feel like you care whether you're getting it right, and that is a big deal. You mentioned my personal life, and I've actually had some experience in taking this into my personal life, because my husband is a deacon in the Catholic Church, and so when he went through training to do that, the wives go through the entire training, and part of that was learning how to have some counseling with people when they come with questions, active listening, and for that, paraphrasing is really even more important than asking questions. You don't want people to feel like they're being interrogated. And your job is not to come up with solutions for them. You're not thinking about what you're going to say to them.
Right.
You just want them to know that you hear them and that you understand what they're saying. And so that paraphrasing is vital for that.
So important.
Yeah.
Applications.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, how do you confirm with people that you're interviewing that you truly appreciate their point of view? Because you must interview people with a lot of different points of view.
Yes, yeah.
She's a political reporter.
Yeah, the trick is affirming them without necessarily
Agreeing.
Yes, right. Not necessarily, because sometimes you want to draw people out on their opinion, even though you might be thinking, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, or this person is way off. But that's not your job to say.
You're not judging.
Yeah, no. A lot of times, really, what you want to do is just draw out their point of view, and then, if it's appropriate, you can start challenging their opinions. So yeah, you draw them out. You say open-ended questions are the best. Tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to ask people about, how they develop their opinions or their thoughts. When did you first start thinking about this? Did you have a personal experience? So, choosing your questions. But then the nonverbal communication, or short, nodding,
Communicates
smiling, you saying okay, those little short verbal cues that I'm hearing what you're saying. And you don't want it to become like a tick, you don't want it to become annoying. Sometimes there are people who will just repeat back what you say regardless. You can tell they're doing it without even thinking about it. I try to change it up a little bit sometimes and not just repeat the words back verbatim, but to put them in my own words so that it gives some idea that I'm actually thinking about what they're saying.
And not be the bobblehead.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, I imagine that it's nerve-wracking for people to be interviewed. How do you get them to open up about sensitive topics in an interview?
Yeah, it depends on the person and their level of experience with the media. A lot of times you're not diving right into that topic, right? You take them through some stuff that's not so personal and not so emotional. And then, a lot of times when I'm interviewing somebody about a personal topic, it's because I know they want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I introduce the topic gently. I let them know that if they decide not to talk about it, it's okay. There have been times when somebody will think they want to talk about something and they decide not to, and I might bring them back to it at the end of the interview. But I think having a gentle tone of voice, asking gently, trying to keep your facial expressions neutral, not being judgmental in the way you ask a question, and really let your empathy show. You know, if you care about what happened to somebody, let them know that. You don't have to be the judge in the black,
in the robe.
Black robe. Yes. So
a lot of tools she's touching on from the book.
You've done a lot of work around mental illness and reporting about mental illness. And how did you connect with people? That's a very emotional issue for people.
Yeah, it is, and frankly, it's an emotional issue for me because I'm an opinion writer. In this particular case, especially in the last year, I was able to approach people as an ally in trying to help get more resources and accessibility for mental health treatment in Iowa. And the reason for that was that I had an experience in my life where a close friend of mine lost their son to suicide, and they had gone through trying to get mental health treatment in Iowa and just weren't finding it. So there was a shared experience there that helped people feel like I was an ally that they could open up to, and also to help them feel like they're doing something good by telling their story. So it was the idea that yes, it's a risk for you to talk about this, but there could be a reward for it because it helps bring people to understanding about the issue.
I gotta ask you one last question before we let her go. What about today's landscape? There's a lot of confrontational, it seems like, reporting, and is there still that need to kind of develop respectful relationships? And what would you tell someone coming up the ranks in journalism?
Yeah, so I do teach journalism students, and one of the things we talk about is the confrontational landscape in the media, especially when you watch cable news. There's very little actual reporting of the news. There's just a lot of arguing over it.
And a lot of opinions.
Right. And what I notice about that is that listening as a skill is completely lost in these discussions, right? You've got two people who are on opposite sides, and all they're doing is really thinking of the next thing that they want to say. They're not thinking about where the other person is coming from and trying to find common ground, right? I think it's dangerous for our democracy, frankly, and it's dangerous for journalism. So I applaud what you're doing in trying to help people understand how to develop that active listening skill, because I think it's something that's completely lacking today.
And doesn't come naturally.
No.
You actually have to learn how to do it.
No, that is true. I mean, it's a skill and you have to practice it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What a great opportunity to interview the interviewer.
It's fun to be on the side of the table once in a while.
I bet it is. Well, thanks to Kathy for joining us. Thanks to all of you for joining us. If you missed any portion of the program or would like to share it with others, you'll find the entire program on Tero's YouTube channel. Tune in again next Monday morning at 9:03 Central Time, where we'll explore another tool in your Invisible Toolbox.
And now it's your turn. We welcome your ideas and suggestions for future shows. Email your ideas to ideas@yourinvisibletooolbox.com. Find us on your favorite social media platform, and if you haven't subscribed to Tero's YouTube channel, subscribe today. You'll be alerted as to when future shows are going to air. A thank you to Rachel Trainham, our camera person, and to Kyle Plummer, our director today, and to Kathy. Thank you so much.
And thanks to all of you. And that's a wrap.